Welcome to Fridays with a Forester. This is February 14th, 2025. Our topic today is Minnesota ash woodlands and emerald ash borer. Our host today is myself, Gary Wyatt, Extension Educator with the University of Minnesota Extension, and Rose Machetik from St. Cloud. She's our regional support staff. Thank you, Rose, for helping out today. Our topic today is Minnesota ash woodlands and emerald ash borer. Our speakers today are Eli Segor with the University of Minnesota Extension Specialist in our forestry team on campus, and Cloquet. And then Josh Donatel is our Minnesota DNR forester, and he's from the Grand Rapids area. So today's Zoom, we want you to ask your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. We do try and keep these Fridays with a Forester from 9 o'clock to 10 o'clock. But if we do have a lot of questions after 10 o'clock, we'll try and get back to you through email. All of our recordings are recorded through our Z link in our YouTube channel, z.umn.edu/Fridays. And we'll repeat that after a while. Eli, I'm going to stop sharing. I'll let you begin.
All right, sounds good. Well, Gary, thanks for having us, and it's great to see such a good turnout here for the first Fridays with a Forester session of 2025. I'm Eli Segor, an extension specialist based at the Cloquet Forestry Center, and I'm here with Josh Donatel. Josh is DNR private forest management forester working in Itasca and part of Cooch County, north central Minnesota. And we're going to be talking about something that we all in the forestry community have been hearing an awful lot about, and I imagine many of you out there listening have as well, which is emerald ash borer, and what do we do with woodland ash? What do we do with ash? Cities mostly have things taken care of by removing ash trees, at least in the parts of the state where emerald ash borer is established. But managing woodlands presents a whole different set of issues and in some ways opportunities. And we're going to be talking through those today. So what you should expect is, I don't know exactly how long we'll ramble, but maybe it depends how many questions we get while we're speaking. But we've got about 20 minutes, 25 minutes of content prepared. And I'm going to present most of that. I'll turn to Josh for a couple of things throughout the slides. But then we're planning to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And most of the questions we'll just take at the end. I actually I should have paid closer attention when you were introducing things, Gary. You asked folks to submit questions through the Q&A, right? Or was it through the webinar chat?
Yes, through the Q&A.
Okay, so that's funny because I have the chat kind of open here, but I guess I won't see them there. What I was going to say is that I may... if I see, all right, now I've got questions going. So I may pause for questions. If there's something that comes up that's a clarification question or seems like it should get immediate attention, we may pause, but we'll do most of them at the end. All right, let's get to it. So you are, most of you out there have probably seen situations like this, and this is what we're talking about. This is an ash, if you're into... and this is not a very technical talk, but I guess I'm hitting it right off the bat. If you're into native plant communities, this is a wet forest northern 64 system, WFN 64, which is classified as a very wet ash swamp. And across northern Minnesota, this is where we see most of the ash growing. Minnesota has a huge ash resource, well over 1 billion ash trees, at least before EAB arrived. And there is, of course, scattered upland ash throughout the state. But across northern Minnesota, most of what we see is ash growing in these wet forest ecosystems. And when it grows like this, it's pretty much all ash. About 99% of the tree species in these wet forest systems are black ash, mix of green ash in there too, but almost all ash. And EAB is going to have a huge impact on ash trees. It seems to be killing just about all the ash trees that it encounters. And so we're expecting big impacts on systems like this. By the way, I'll just say again, if you are here because you are wondering what should I do with my front yard ash tree, we can quickly address that, but that's not really the focus. Josh and I are going to be talking mostly about forests like you see pictured here? What do you do with woodland ash in the face of EAB? So again, we'll be talking about guidance for family woodland owners who have a lot of ash. I didn't mention this earlier, but I should say the slides are all available. We've got a link to the slides that Josh and I are presenting today. Maybe Rose can put that in the chat. That link also appears on the last slide that we're sharing too. So if there's something that you see in here and you don't have a chance to write it down, you'll be able to see these slides yourself either throughout the presentation if you want to, if we get that into the chat, or afterwards. There it is. Thanks, Rose, for posting that. All right, so I want to talk just for a moment about, so you're hearing from Josh and me. I'm with Extension, University of Minnesota. Josh is with the DNR, and Extension is, so we have different roles. Extension does woodland owner outreach and engagement. So we work closely with researchers on our St. Paul campus and other places to take emerging research and what we know about the science of woodland management and associated issues and kind of package that into materials that real people in the real world can use. What we don't do is we don't go out and walk your woods with you. In counties that have a local extension educator, there is some of that. They do some of that work. But most of that work is done by local landowner service providers like Josh. Josh, again, is with the DNR's PFM, or Private Forest Management Program, Soil and Water Conservation Districts. I think we have Matt Picklow on the line today. He's with the Itasca SWCD and others. Many counties across northern Minnesota employ SWCD foresters, although not all of them. Private consulting foresters, industry foresters, and many others, they are the folks that will generally come out, answer your questions, walk your land with you, and provide that one-on-one assistance. So the kind of partnership that you see with Josh and me working together today is something that we're really trying to do a lot. Just have to put this up because it was such a fun event. I hope that some of you out there watching were at the Minnesota Family Woodlands Conference. We did this in Grand Rapids just, I guess, a month ago now. Time flies. And again, just to illustrate the ways that Extension is working with local service providers, that's me on stage, that's Josh sitting right next to me, along with an industry forester, Adam Sutherland from Blandon, Stan Grossman, private consultant, and then Matt Picklow. Trying to introduce folks to what local service providers can do for them. And as we talk about woodland management options, these folks are the ones that are going to be mainly your points of contact. Just another photo from that fun event. That was at Minnesota North College, ICC, right in Grand Rapids. So let's talk about ash management. Let's start with kind of key messages. What do you need to know about ash and EAB? EAB, emerald ash borer, is an invasive insect that threatens Minnesota's ash trees. I've already told you Minnesota has about 1 billion ash trees. We have a huge ash resource. EAB kills pretty much every ash tree that it encounters. What should you do? How should you be thinking as a woodland owner about ash, about your woodlands in the face of EAB? Well, the focus really should be on maintaining forest cover and maintaining a healthy ecosystem. So a lot of ash trees are going to die. There are not effective ways to treat woodland ash. There are effective treatments. You can have, if you have an ash tree in your front yard or a gigantic pile of money, you can pay someone to treat trees individually, to inject them with an insecticide that kills the EAB larvae and keeps the trees alive. I've been treating a yard tree at my place for 8 years, 10 years, something like that. But that's expensive and it's cost prohibitive to do that at any scale. So planting non-ash trees early, if your focus should be on maintaining forest cover and a healthy ecosystem, then getting other species in there soon can help maintain forest cover, even if you lose your ash. So we're really emphasizing trying to get non-ash species established in your ash woodlands just to maintain a healthy forest ecosystem. A well-planned harvest can help maintain a healthy future forest. That's because a well-planned harvest can help you to generate some revenue from your ash if you're lucky enough to have ash woodlands that are accessible and suitable for a timber harvest. In many cases, that's not possible. but in some cases it is. That can open up growing space and create favorable conditions for the species that'll be coming next to establish the site before you lose your ash. And another key message that we really are emphasizing is work with one of those landowner service providers that I mentioned earlier. Find a consulting forester, find a DNR forester, SWCD industry. Talk to someone who can help you understand the unique considerations on your land and what your options might be. Realistically, it's important to understand that management options may be limited. And I don't mean to sound negative. In fact, I want to leave you with a bit of a positive message and a message of hope, which I think is entirely warranted. And I'll be talking about that a little later. But realistically, it's important to think or to be aware that management options are going to be limited. And I'm going to hand the screen to Josh here a little bit to talk about the kinds of things that he's seeing. Again, he's based right in the heart of kind of where emerald ash borer EAB is now, right on the edge of this giant million acres or so of ash dominated forest, which coincides pretty well with his work area. So Josh, do you want to talk a little bit about not just the challenges, but kind of what you're seeing with the woodland owners you're working with?
Yeah, sounds good, Eli. So what we're seeing is it's difficult to market, pure ash sales. What you really need is to mix in more commercially viable species. So I've had luck on private in-state land adding in aspen, volume, basswood. You got to get something there that a logger is able to harvest. Make money on it by bringing it to the mill while removing ash. And also mentioned earlier on your slide, I think this is really where a forester can help you out. So where I'm at, I'm kind of in the middle of the markets. We have a lot of loggers, and if you have a forester that is able to market your sale to multiple loggers in this area, that really will increase your chance of finding a logger that's interested in doing some harvesting for you. The other thing I'll say on your slide there, ash woodlands tend to be wet, and a winter like last year, it would have been tough for anyone to even get into an ash swamp to do some harvesting. So this winter, of course, is completely different. They're able to get just about anywhere they want to go, but I think that's another thing that kind of makes it difficult to manage ash forests.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. It really is tough, and the way timber is sold, typically, at least on large, public ownerships and so on, is a contract ranging from 2 to 4 years, and it can be tough to predict. Loggers can be hesitant to bid on and buy ash, not knowing, well, are we going to have winters like last winter, or are we going to have a winter like this winter where we can get anywhere? And so it can be challenging. And you're going to talk a little bit later about cost sharing and about other options that might be available to help people get this done. But we did want to, without, again, hopefully sounding too negative, we did want to mention some of the challenges here.
I think it is overall, Eli. I think we have gotten some better markets. So the pallet mill just south of Rapids, for bigger ash, they are able to market that stuff. So I don't really think it is all doom and gloom, but I do at the same time understand it is a challenge.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Great. I want to take one of these questions live. Someone asked, you've heard me say a couple of times that EAB kills pretty much all ash trees. The question is, are all the ash trees gone in neighboring southern states such as Iowa and southern Minnesota? The answer is no, they're not all gone yet. EAB certainly is working its way through those systems. A lot of ash trees have died across southern Minnesota, and certainly a lot of street trees in the Twin Cities, and well beyond. But it'll take many years for EAB to get everywhere. EAB is killing just about all ash trees. There is some research in Michigan and other states east of us where EAB has been present for a long time that suggests that there may be a small amount of resistance to EAB. EAB is a perfectly innocuous insect in its native range. It doesn't decimate ash trees, or it would be extinct itself. But our ash trees are not used to it. So there is the possibility that over a very long period, resistance would naturally spread through our native ash population as it has overseas. but that'll take a real long time. So there are researchers working very hard on, understanding the mechanisms behind that resistance. And that's another reason for hope in the future as well. So I hope that answers the question well enough. They're not all gone, but across much of Michigan, they almost all of them are. All right, where are we? Okay, and I guess it's worth mentioning too, my colleague Angie Gupta and some others, Emily Dombeck and Anna Stockstead, have been doing some work through our Climate Ready Woodlands work, which I'm going to be sharing in a minute, about eco-anxiety, the idea that some really big things are happening related to climate change and invasive species. EAB is not a climate change issue, it's an invasive insect. But some of these things can feel out of our control. And part of the reason that we're thinking about, no, you actually really do have options, whether it's local markets or various practices that you can take to protect some of your ash. There is a lot that we can do. And it's important, I think, to both acknowledge that eco-anxiety, which is valid and real, and appreciate what we have and think about the opportunities we have to take action that's meaningful to maintain healthy, productive woodlands and to protect the ash resource that's so important here in Minnesota. So if you're looking for more information about ash and EAB, the extension website is right here. And we've got a number of these links ready to go in the chat. So you'll see some of these appearing in the chat, and they'll also appear on a slide at the end of the presentation as well. So Extension's main webpage with information about managing ash woodlands is the one that you see linked here. It has information, fairly basic information, similar to what Josh and I are working through now. There's another important source of information about that's called Managing Ash Woodlands, recommendations for Minnesota woodland owners. You can see in this guide that was revised in 2019, you can see recommendations for replacement species by native plant community systems. So native plant community information can get pretty detailed pretty quickly, and it can be a lot if you're not a botanist or an ecologist. But it can provide, this guide provides some good information about it. You can see a little bit here about what kind of information. This is available for free online. What kind of information you can find in here: extent and abundance of ash, how to identify it, about EAB, and then what to do, what your options are in these various ecosystems. And again, if you're not sure which plant community you've got, a local forester can help you to sort of decode this. And what resources like this go into, and you see this information on our Managing Ash Woodlands page as well, this one that I mentioned a minute ago, are a couple of ideas. One, a big concern associated with managing woodland ash is that because it's a wet ecosystem and because ash sucks up a lot of water from its roots and transpires it up into the atmosphere, if we remove, or if all those trees die, if all the trees are suddenly gone, there's concern that we'll lose permanent forest cover, so that all of those wet ash swamps will become, open wetlands, cattail dominated wetlands. And research trials that have clear cut ash across large areas have found that to be true. So a concern is if you clear cut it all, you may lose forest cover for many years, or if we do nothing, because just about the only thing growing out there is ash, it might well be that, again, we would lose forest cover. We'd see a transition from forest to brushland, which isn't all bad, has important wildlife benefits and some other things, but isn't great either, across a very large area, or conversion to cattail swamps. So silviculturally, what a forester might tell you, and what we're seeing done on public lands, is removing some of the ash, either in strips or in thinning type treatments, which opens up growing space for new seedlings to grow underneath the ash, but also maintains enough ash cover to keep pulling enough water out of that soil so that the site doesn't swamp and we don't lose all forest cover. So opening up some growing space, creating a little bit of room in there, and favoring the growth of the newly planted species in the understory that you've established is a good strategy. Okay, let's keep going. I see a question here about ash's role in the ecosystem and a couple of other things. We'll get to those a little bit later. So again, this is the ash management guide that I referred to earlier. And if you look in this guide, you'll see a couple of things. There's a lot of work being done now by forestry researchers about species to plant. And Josh, I'd love to hand this to you in just a moment to see kind of what you're seeing or what you're recommending for the woodland owners you work with. I just want to draw folks' attention to the kind of recommendations here. There are a lot of different forest ecosystem types. There are a lot of different species. People may be tuning in from northern or southern Minnesota. So it would be tough for us in a webinar like this to say, oh, you should plant that. But if you look in guides like this, you'll see basic recommendations, some of which have been shown to perform well in research and others have not. And Josh, I wonder if you have any thoughts here on what species are you recommending to folks in your work area?
Yeah, so what I've been seeing, I mean, as a forester, I've never been a huge fan of balsam poplar, or what we call BAM. But what I'm seeing is, if you have some of that BAM, so this is going to be in the less wet of the two communities, that is going to be around. And, working people through either cost share projects or timber sales, just telling them to clip. Obviously, we're doing some sort of removal of the overstory and the ash, but then we're also clipping all the balsam poplar, and that stuff is coming back gangbusters. So I think, that is a good answer. The other thing, our silviculture folks are waiting for balsam poplar sticks to be available from our state nursery. We feel that would be another good way for not only state, but private folks to diversify their ash. The other thing is, in that wetter of the two communities, I have not seen much of any regeneration outside of ash. So that's going to be the community where you really are going to have to plant some of these species listed. The other thing is that you're going to have to think about the time of year when that system is wet, horribly wet, and you're going to have to be thinking about that when you're tree planting. You're not going to be able to just plant anywhere and everywhere you want. You're going to have to find hummocks, high areas within that swamp to actually place these seedlings so they are able to survive.
Yeah, of course, most trees in Minnesota are most tree planting happens early in the growing season, May, maybe early June. But what you're referring to is that during that period with snow melt and so on, these sites tend to be inundated. And so it's very
they
tough.
could be nasty, 2 to 3 feet of water. So
right. And so fall plantings, and so if you can get seedling stock in the fall, if you can do it, these systems tend to be significantly drier at that time, so that might be an option. But it's always going to be tough because of that inundation. Then they're coming out of the next spring pretty deep in water as well. So there are challenges.
Yeah, and seedling availability is really the challenge with fall planting. I think that would be a good answer, but our nurseries are built for our spring planting seasons here. And that's the main challenge, I think, on that issue.
Right. So at a small scale, and we're going to be talking more about cost sharing in a bit, but on a small scale, I mean, woodland owners move seedlings around their properties all the time. So, I mean, if you're looking at 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 seedlings and you've got a lot of seedlings abundantly on your property, you can do that. Absolutely. You can move them around at the end of the growing season, potentially with some good success. But, if you're talking about a large number of seedlings across many acres and you want to plant at a high density, that really is going to be a challenge. As Josh says, getting that seedling stock is going to be tough.
But if you do have some BAM, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, as far as those sticks from the nursery, you can do that just on your property. You can just clip off the edges of those branches where you see the live buds and just put that stick in the ground and that thing will sprout. So, I mean, that is something you could do in the fall if you had some BAM on your property.
Yep. So, excuse me, not ash, but aspen is a clonal species. So that's why Josh is talking about sticks instead of seeds or seedlings. Just make sure you don't plant them upside down. Make sure the buds are facing up, and you can just stick them in the ground. And if you take good care of them, don't dry them out excessively and so on, that can be very effective. That's a great idea. All right, a few other important considerations. Don't move ash firewood. For goodness sake, there's going to be a lot of dead ash moving across the region. Well, I hope not moving. There's going to be a lot of dead ash across the region. EAB on its own doesn't move all that far. It's not, a migratory bird that flies thousands of miles. It flies a few miles a year. Natural dispersal rates are pretty short. What moves it to new areas is people moving firewood or moving ash-infested wood from one place to another. And, oh yeah, I'm just going to burn it right away. It's not a big deal. Well, then they don't burn it, or the EAB fly out, before they do, and now it's established a long way away. So please don't move ash firewood. Learn to identify ash trees, EAB, and signs of infestation. You can see a lot of information about this. I didn't want to talk for too long here, so I haven't gone into all these details, but if you look at the webpage you see linked at the bottom there, z.umn.edu/EAB, you'll see good information, and there are other sources there that we'll share later as well. And if you do suspect that you have an EAB infestation, please report it. Again, there's information about how to report it at that website. Where to find help? Josh, I think I'll hand it to you a little bit here too. I said before, Extension's role is really mainly to get information out, and then we encourage folks to find a local service provider. There are several listed here. Josh, you want to walk us through these three?
Yeah, so on the DNR end, we have forest health specialists at each one of our regions. Eric Otto is the forest health specialist here in Grand Rapids. We are a good resource to reach out to if you feel you have an EAB infestation. Certainly have gotten some calls on that in the past, but most of that has turned out to be other things. The local soil and water conservation district, Matt Picklow here in Itasca County, is always a great resource to reach out to. And then this MFA, Minnesota Forestry Association Boots on Your Ground Call Before You Cut program. So if you're thinking of going the timber sale route, as far as, like you said earlier, just removing some portion of your ash to get that sun hitting the forest floor and stimulating new growth, this is a good opportunity to have a forester come out, check out your property for free. And they will just talk about the options you have as far as getting a logger out there. Maybe it isn't a good deal. Maybe it's only a 5-acre parcel and they're going to tell you, this probably won't work. But they'll give you some advice whether, you can have a harvest or not.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, we've got a ton of good questions here. We'll get to those at the end. There we go. All right. Another important message, and I was just reviewing and preparing for this talk, I was reviewing this publication that just came out from the University of Massachusetts called Managing Northeastern Forests Threatened by Emerald Ash Borer. And one of the things that they really emphasize is it's not too late, and it's really important that we not give up. So when I talked earlier about eco-anxiety, there's really a lot that we can do. They talk in this guide, and you can see information elsewhere too, about there are lots of options. I said before that treating a large area is cost prohibitive, but treating a small area may not be cost prohibitive for some woodland owners. And it may make sense to protect small pockets of ash. That might be something that some woodland owners would choose to do in order to maintain at least a very small, viable population, hopefully to kind of lifeboat us through some of these things. There are a number of other things you can do too to maintain ash and to maintain hope in the face of what could be a really daunting, what is a pretty daunting situation. So we're at 9:30. I want to move fairly quickly through this, but I did want to briefly mention the work of our team on climate-ready woodlands. So I mentioned this in the context of replacement species. Again, EAB is not a climate change issue. It's not driven by climate change. Emerald ash borer is an invasive insect. But the reason I mentioned the climate-ready woodlands team is that They have done a lot of work in the last year or two to take a lot of technical information, ecological information, climate change projections, and tree suitability information, and put those together with region-specific recommended lists of tree species to plant. I want to encourage you to check it out. The link is down here. If you want to point your phone at that QR code, that's another way to get to it. And I think, yeah, Rose has just put that link in the chat as well. I do want to emphasize the point that our Climate Ready Woodlands work goes well beyond ash, and most of the species that they recommend would not be suitable for a very wet ash swamp ecosystem. So just make sure that you're looking, and they acknowledge that, and that there's information in there. So make sure that you're thinking about species that would be suitable for the ecosystems you're trying to manage, not just the region of the state, but also the plant community. And I do see, and we'll address some of the questions about species. People are asking about tamarack, swamp white oak, basswood. We'll talk about those in a few minutes too. Just an example of the region-specific information here in the Climate Ready Woodlands Guide. You can click each of these and get a list of species recommended for each region. I want to kind of close with some other extension learning opportunities. I've just mentioned a little bit earlier, I showed you a couple of pictures from the Minnesota Family Woodlands Conference. Anna Stockstad on our extension forestry team is taking the lead on that. We're thinking about sites for another Minnesota Family Woodlands Conference, which we expect to happen a little less than a year from now. Those can be great ways to connect with people like Josh and other private forest management foresters and other landowner service providers. The Minnesota Woodland Stewards course is starting up now. If you're tuning in from the area around St. John's University, the Avon Hills, Anna's about to start a new cohort in that region very soon. I don't remember the start date, although she's told it to me several times. But if you're interested in Minnesota Woodland Stewards, reach out to one of us and we can connect you. Other Fridays with a Forester sessions, obviously you're aware of these if you've just tuned in. But there is a lot of good information coming up. And there's a lot of other stuff too. The Climate Ready Woodlands group is going to be doing a number of presentations. We're trying to recruit folks to track trees, how they're doing, some of these climate ready trees that might be already growing in your woods. If you want to get involved in that and reporting on those through iNaturalist and other platforms, we'd love to have you plug into that. And a great source of all of that information is the My Minnesota Woods newsletter, which I didn't think to put a link on this slide, but maybe one of us can get that into the chat as well. That's a monthly newsletter that, again, if you're here, maybe you already get that newsletter, but I encourage you to subscribe.
Hey, Eli, can I jump in?
Absolutely.
So Dave Rorick and myself, so Dave Rorick is with the Minnesota Forestry Association. We do have a Healthy Forest meeting. We have 2 of them planned for this spring. So this would be in Grand Rapids for folks that are local around here. If you go to getlearning.org, that'll bring you to the community education page for Itasca County, and that is a free meeting. And I do have quite a few slides related to emerald ash borer. So local folks around Grand Rapids, that'd be another opportunity to learn some more stuff.
All right, awesome. So again, to wrap up, and then we'll go to Q&A. Focus of this talk is just kind of guidance for woodland owners whose woods have a large component of ash. I hope this has been informative, and we're going to turn our attention now to the Q&A. All right, so scrolling in the wrong place. So there's a lot here. Starting from the top. That's interesting. It says Anna Stockstead would like to answer that question. Anna, is that true? Would you like to jump in and post an answer, or
Nope.
was that a?
Nope, that's for you.
Yeah. Okay. Great. All right. So it seems like younger elm individuals are resistant, and older trees die. That has been true on my land. EAB recently arrived. I'm 90 miles east of the Twin Cities campus. Old specimens are dying, but those in former plowed fields, fallow for 30 years, young are vigorous. That's not too reliable, at least from a population standpoint. So I mean, there are mechanical limitations on where a bug can fit, and I'm hesitant to say this, but I think I'm going to say it anyway. I've heard folks speculate that maybe trees smaller in diameter than about an inch of stem diameter might be tougher for EAB to colonize, but I'm going to encourage anyone who's on the line here to correct me if I've got that wrong. But the basic idea is true. Young, even pretty small trees will be impacted, and of course, as soon as they get large enough, they'll be impacted. There's a
I
related
could jump in
question.
here.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just out doing a regen survey on a large ash sale I had last winter on private land. Some of the earliest research had said, if you take larger ash, remove them, get younger ash below there, you will be good to go due to the ash or the emerald ash borer being attracted to phloem. Bigger trees have more phloem. I mean, it kind of makes sense, but so I went out there. It was the wetter of the ash communities. It's all young ash coming up. And I did ask one of the forest health specialists, like, are we in a good spot here? Is this going to be, not completely resistant, but is this going to be, at least healthy while this invasion comes through? And she said that's not the case. That early research was not right. And even young ash will be susceptible to emerald ash borer.
Yeah. So real small trees might be okay for a bit, but that's not going to be an effective kind of protection. There's a related question down below. After EAB sweeps through and there are no ash trees left, will the EAB die off, thereby making it safe to plant ash again? Basically, no. These are complex, biological systems, and someone asked earlier, are all the ash gone in these other areas? No, there will be lingering ash that might be isolated, just like we see American elms, many years after the arrival of Dutch elm disease that has wiped out just about all of them. And so it's not going to be quite that simple that hey, let's just let the wave roll through and then we'll be good to go. Charlie asks, are there any limitations on transporting ash from one county to another? Yes, there are two kinds of limitations. One is a general, I can't emphasize enough, please do not move ash firewood from one county to another. And in fact, it's not just ash. Don't move firewood. Spongy moth is also transported on firewood and other products like it. Another invasive and damaging insect that's established now in Minnesota. So one limitation is us haranguing you that you just really should not do it. It would be best if we don't. But there are also quarantines in place across many counties where EAB is established. And I am not sure. So Rose, if you would mind, there's a link that you've probably already posted somewhere. I'm kind of looking back through. But MDA, the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, has an interactive map of where EAB is in Minnesota. I meant to include that on a slide and I forgot to put it in. There, well, that's the best practices for EAB. I thought I had another link that I had provided on where it is. If not, we can follow up with that. But there are quarantines in place that prevent the movement of wood from areas where EAB is established, outside of those areas. And the MDA EAB quarantine maps are available online, probably through those links. There it is. Thanks, Gary, for posting that map. That's another kind of limitation. Oh boy. Mark Herwig asks, what is ash's role in northern forest ecosystems? Its use to wildlife, etc. Is ash's ecological role easily replaced by other trees? Josh, I'd love your thoughts on this one, but no, it's not easy. It's a major component of the ecosystem. It'd be hard to describe all of the roles that it plays, cultural and ecological, but Josh, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. The major thing that ash does is, it allows those areas to be habitable for other tree species, other shrubs, which, wildlife can eat. So I would agree with you. I don't think there is a good replacement for ash on these forests.
Yeah. It's worth mentioning too, and I'm not in a good position to talk about it in any detail, but I know that indigenous populations, American Indian nations present in Minnesota, consider ash extremely important culturally, and there's a major cultural component to the concern about the loss of ash as well. Again, there are others who can speak to that better than I can, but I think it's important to mention it. So there's not just the ecological and hydrological roles that we've already discussed. There are other cultural reasons why it's of great importance and to all of us and to the system as well. What about tamarack? There's another one. Simple question. What about tamarack? And then, has eastern larch not been successful as a replacement species for black ash wet forest areas? I'll say quickly that I've heard people, I just heard someone saying last week that they've been managing a couple of sites and tamarack's done great. And so tamarack has some potential, but it has, I think it's safe to say, Josh, I wonder if you can add anything more. It is not generally seen as a suitable replacement for ash. The trials that I've seen so far have not seen tamarack perform especially well. Do you have anything to add there, Josh?
Yeah, I would agree that Peter Reich Lab they've looked at that. They've done some research on it. The one thing I will say is tamarack's sun loving. So,
Right.
If we're going to be thinning, I don't know if that's a great opportunity to plant a sun loving species under existing canopy. But, maybe if you're doing some gap cutting, had some 1 or 2 acre openings, that might be a spot where you could try to put some tamarack in the ground.
Swamp white oak or basswood. So there's a large research study up on the Cutfoot Sioux Experimental Forest near Deer River in U.S. National Forest lands. Brian Palick and Rob Slazak and others have been really leading that study. They looked at swamp white oak as one of the species, and it has done quite well. Swamp white oak is quite rare across there may be scattered individuals naturally occurring, but it's not well established across northern Minnesota. And there was concern initially that it might not handle the winters very well for obvious reason. But from what I've seen, it does seem to be performing pretty well. Josh mentioned earlier there's a general issue with seedling availability. It can be hard to get seedlings of just about any species. We need more nursery capacity, and it's certainly true that there are very limited supplies of species like swamp white oak because it's not a species that nurseries have been growing or that people have been demanding for very long. I think there's less potential or less general conventional wisdom that basswood might be seen as a suitable replacement. But Josh, anything to add on either of those?
In the ash forest I've been in, maybe in that floodplain community, you'd see those two kind of growing together. But just in the ash swamps that I see around here, I don't see a lot of. I mean, they're probably growing together right at the edge, where the upland's meeting the lowland. But I don't see a lot of basswood actually in with the ash in the wetter areas.
Right. Brian asks, what about moving ash now if EAB hasn't invaded the site? Well, there are 2 reasons why that's not a good idea. One is even if you're not seeing any outward signs of EAB, things like flaking bark or dieback or just plain dead ash, it's possible that EAB is already there. It takes 5 to 10 years after establishment on a site for trees to begin to die. It's not immediate. It's not like oak wilt where the tree dies pretty much, quite quickly. So even if you're not seeing outward signs of EAB, it's very possible that there is an infestation, that there are emerald ash borer insects and larvae present in that system. So moving it presents the same dangers that it would if you were moving wood that's known to be infested. Another reason is that moving firewood can move other insects and pathogens as well. And for reasons I've already mentioned, it's not a good idea to move firewood. So what are you supposed to do? You need firewood, and you have it in one place, you need it in another. It really would be better to purchase treated firewood that's been treated with phytosanitary treatments, basically heat to kill pathogens, and to buy it near the site where you're using it. Okay, we've kind of already talked about tamarack. Do these cold winters slow the spread of EAB? That's an interesting question. So the research that I've seen shows that, again, I think I've got the numbers right. Maybe at 35 degrees below Fahrenheit, 95% of EAB larvae under the bark, that's where they overwinter, will die. And I might have those numbers slightly wrong. It might be 30 below, but I think it's 95% die at 35 degrees below zero. So that's good. But keep in mind, it's not wind chills because the larvae are under the bark. It's the temperature at the larva. And there's an insulating factor from the bark. And so we really need sustained temperatures at or well below that. And the bottom line for cold winters is, yeah, they will slow the spread of EAB. And I saw some encouraging content from the DNR's forest health team a week or two ago discussing this issue. But really, it's only expected to be a major factor at keeping EAB back in far, far northern Minnesota. And it's unlikely, it's not the case that woodland owners can rest easy, in Itasca County because it's too cold there. And especially, we've all seen that winters are getting a little bit milder. So the future outlook isn't great for that. So it might help, but it's not a solution. Black willow or peach leaf willow, boy, possible. I haven't seen many trials on those. Yeah, I love it, Bonnie. Promote black ash flooring. Producers in Isanti sold this mostly clear 8-foot flooring in 3, 5, and 7-inch width. It's beautiful. I agree. I think it's absolutely beautiful wood. Looks a lot like oak. It's solid, performs well as flooring. Couldn't agree more. Different kind of question. Will the recording be sent out afterwards? It'll certainly be posted. Gary, I know Gary's going to talk in his closing slides about how we're going to distribute that, but yes, it will be available to everybody. Josh, have you heard of any success planting yellow birch as a replacement species?
Ooh, I'm a big yellow birch guy. So we have a local nursery here at Task Greenhouse that does have some supply of yellow birch most years. So I did purchase 150 of them 2 years ago. I have some letter ash on my property. I did plant them. They survived. I'm not seeing a ton of growth, but they're there. My ash is kind of inundated with flooding every spring, so it's kind of dying on its own, even without emerald ash borer. So that's kind of why I did it. But it is on that list of potential replacements. So once again, and I just really like yellow birch. It's a long-lived hardwood. So I would suggest you could give it a shot. Let me know.
I love it. There are a few questions here that I don't know that we're going to have time to go into specifically. What about bald cypress? What about black walnut? What about red maple? And I guess what I would say about all of these is a couple of things. One, be really careful about moving species that are not that are not native or from kind of nearby native, meaning native to the general ecosystem. And in particular, be really careful about moving nursery stock across really long distances. That can pose a couple of different kinds of risks. One kind of risk that's potentially really serious is that it can be a vector for movement of pathogens that can have widespread effects across many different species. It's not to say you can never do it, but it can be really hard to know about those risks. Hey, could this plant material be infested? We don't know. We have seen that occur with pretty severe consequences with some species of oaks in California that have been infested, and other places that have nursery stock is moving long distances, thousands of miles or whatever can be a vector. So just be cautious about that. If you can find local sources of species like bald cypress, maybe give it a try. The other kind of risk is of wasting your money. But bald cypress, oddly enough, I've seen it performing reasonably well in some trials too. So if you can get it from a safe, reputable source and you want to give it a try, consult the Climate Ready Woodlands Guide for recommendations, but I wouldn't rule it out. Okay, long question. I have an outdoor wood furnace that helps heat my house during the winter. I often will cut down trees on my property. Okay. I sometimes get wood from neighbors. That includes ash that have succumbed to EAB. Should I be burning the wood right away or can I leave it stacked on my property? Well, background EAB is already in my county, in my area. I'm not transporting the wood anywhere where there isn't already EAB. My neighbors, yeah. So you're in an environment where EAB is everywhere. There's a good chance that that firewood that you're getting from your neighbor already has EAB in it. And if you let it sit on your property, it's going to fly out and spread. So if that's, I mean, given that it's already in your area, that's a risk that you can evaluate for yourself. I want to emphasize one more time that I really hope that folks will hear clearly that they should not move firewood, whether or not it's from known infested ash trees, long distances. It can pose risks that can be very hard to assess. In the particular situation that I'm hearing here, yeah, it seems like a low risk, but be cautious about moving firewood for reasons that, again, we've probably already said enough. As more ash trees die and the ones left behind might be treated, are the bugs going to have a harder time finding a healthy tree to infect? So will a small minority be left behind? We kind of addressed this question in a different way earlier. It seems really likely that that EAB is just going to become a part of the ecosystem. Yeah, there will be fewer EAB because there will be less large diameter ash that they can infest, but it'll be there. Yeah, a small minority will be left behind. We're getting pretty close to the end of our time. I think I want to hand it back to Gary here. There are a couple of questions, one about cost of treating EAB, or excuse me, cost of treating an ash. That cost can range pretty widely. I've seen prices from $10 to $20 per diameter inch per tree, of course. It's significant, but consult a local arborist. Prices may be different where you are from where we are. And I think I'm going to leave it at that. Josh, do you have any closing thoughts before we hand things back to Gary?
Yeah, about the only thing I hadn't talked about, Eli, was for folks that just aren't going to be successful finding a logger to thin out their ash, we do have a state cost share program that is kind of a backup option for folks that, like I said, aren't able to have a timber sale. And we've been basically just mimicking what we've been doing with timber sales. We've been removing some portion of the ash. I've been telling them to cut all the BAM they can find. And then we're following up with plantings after the cost share project is complete. So for those folks that can't find a logger, that cost share program is there and available to assist you financially in getting those projects completed.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Josh. Those cost share options really are important. And when we were talking earlier about some of the challenges, that can be an important way to get around that. All right, so we've been sharing a lot of links. Again, thanks to Rose and others for sharing links in the chat. And I know Gary has some links that he's going to be sharing too. And I think we'll step aside now, but thanks for your attention. This has been a lot of fun. I hope it's been informative, and we would welcome you to reach out with any additional questions. Gary.
Okay, can you stop sharing? Let's see. I think I got,
Yes.
Get to it here.
There you go.
There, do you see full screen?
Yep.
Thanks, Eli and Josh. Wonderful, wonderful questions. And you see their emails there as Eli had both their emails on the last screen that they had. All of our recordings are going to be recorded on our YouTube channel and posted there at our Z link, z.umn.edu/Fridays. And just want to mention some of our other Fridays coming up, trail design next week, and be aware of that. And you'll get an email on that. I just posted for our recordings all of the links that Josh and Eli have put together. We may not have gotten all of those posted on the chat. So if you haven't, you can look back on the recordings and find them. I know Josh had some northern wet ash swamps, and that was from the natural areas and so forth website. And then in a northern very wet ash swamp documentary and actually documentation that really goes into trees and vegetation in those areas. Very good resources, and obviously the ash management guidelines that was posted. And here's some other links that may or may not have been posted in our chat today, but some very good resources for ash management that you need to be aware of. And as you leave today's Zoom, you'll be asked to do a quick evaluation, and surveys are anonymous. So we ask your condolence and time to fill those out, please. And if you want to belong to get our newsletter, our My Minnesota Woods newsletter, the emails are there, Z links. And then again, all of our recordings from Fridays with a Forester are recorded at the Z link, z.umn.edu/Fridays. And we thank you for joining us again. Thanks, Rose, again, and Anna, and Emily, I think was part of our forestry team on the line here. Eli and Josh, thanks again for your presentation today on ash management. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.